As the sun dipped below the horizon on May 16, 1943, the humid air of northern Australia clung to the sleek, stubby wings of two Commonwealth Aircraft Corporation Boomerangs. Flying Officer Johnstone and Sergeant Stammer sat vigilant in their cockpits, eyes scanning the darkening sky. These homegrown fighters, Australia's first combat aircraft, patrolled the vast expanse above Horn Island Airfield in Torres Strait, the country's northernmost defense against the looming Japanese threat. Suddenly, the peaceful patrol erupted into chaos. Three dark silhouettes materialized on the horizon, their profiles unmistakable to the trained eyes of the Australian pilots. Mitsubishi G4M Betty bombers, the scourge of Allied forces in the Pacific, were rapidly closing in on Australian airspace. The Boomerangs' Pratt and Whitney R-1830 twin Wasp engines roared as Johnstone and Stammer pushed their aircraft to full throttle. Despite their compact 36-foot wingspan, the Australian fighters closed the gap with surprising speed, their rugged frames built for this very moment. At 250 yards, the Boomerang's formidable array of two 20mm cannons and twin 77mm Browning machine guns erupted into action. Streams of tracer rounds cut through the twilight, arcing towards the incoming bombers. As cannon shells and machine gun rounds peppered the air around them, the Australian pilots watched in dismay as their fire seemed to have little effect. The sturdy construction of the Japanese bombers appeared to shrug off the Boomerang's assault, the aircraft's thick skin absorbing punishment that would have crippled lesser planes. With the fate of Australia's northern defenses hanging in the balance, Johnstone and Stammer were about to find out what the Boomerangs could really do to defend their homeland. When war broke out in the Pacific, after Japan attacked the United States in December 1941 and began its conquest of all the European territories in the region, Australia grew desperate at the thought of a fully fledged invasion of the homeland. Support from the United Kingdom and the United States was drastically reduced as both countries tended to their matters. Preoccupied that no more fighters would join its fleet, the Royal Australian Air Force, or RAAF, decided to act fast and build its homemade fighter. Thus, the RAAF commissioned the Commonwealth Aircraft Corporation, or CAC, to produce a single-seat fighter based on the Wirraway, a trainer and general-purpose aircraft. In 1942, they began developing the CAC Boomerang. The result was a compact, single-engine fighter aircraft with a standard monoplane airframe and a distinctive cranked-wing design, contributing to its agility and maneuverability. The Boomerang was shorter in length and wingspan than the Wirraway. It had a length of 25 feet, a wingspan of 36 feet, and a height of 9 feet. It weighed over 7,700 pounds and was powered by a 1,200 horsepower Pratt & Whitney R-1830 twin Wasp radial engine, which was more extensive and more powerful than the engine used in the Wirraway, propelling the fighter to speeds of up to 305 miles per hour, with a rate of climb of 2,900 feet per minute and a range of around 930 miles. The Boomerang's armament comprised two 20mm Hispano Mark II wing cannons, and either 2 or 4 77mm Browning machine guns in the fuselage. Although the aircraft was far from perfect and still required work, it was rushed to service as the country was consumed by the fear of a Japanese invasion that by 1942 seemed apparent after several bombings of the Australian homeland. The CAC Boomerang's operational history began in October 1942, with the first training and conversion unit delivered, CA-12A466. Expectations were high for the Boomerang. The war against Japan was well underway, and the menace of the country being invaded by an imperial army still haunted the dreams of the Australians. While the U.S. Army and Marines engaged the enemy at the island of Guadalcanal to protect shipping routes between the U.S. and Australia, the fighting was intense and uncertain. The U.S. forces required support, and the RAAF was expected to return the favor with its homemade fighter. The Boomerang was swiftly dispatched to the No. 2 Operational Training Unit. Its mission was clear: quickly molding the next generation of fighter pilots who would defend Australia's skies and take the fight to the Empire of Japan. In its role as a trainer, the Boomerang generally proved successful. However, it presented unique challenges to pilots without previous combat experience. These rookie aviators, accustomed to the more docile CAC Wirraway trainer, grappled with the Boomerang's unreliable temperament. The main obstacle was the Boomerang's design. Its nose greatly obstructed the pilot's forward view. This limitation made ground operations and landing particularly daunting for inexperienced hands at the controls. The limited visibility also made dogfights and strafing runs more challenging. The engineering team responded by relocating the reflector gun sight to improve the pilot's line of sight, ensuring both safety and combat effectiveness. The CAC Boomerang then made it to frontline units in April 1943. Several Australian-made fighters touched down at Strathpine Airfield in Queensland to join No. 83 Squadron, becoming the first operational unit to receive the homemade fighter. The 83rd Squadron, previously equipped with American Bell P-39 Airacobras, gladly welcomed the Boomerang into its ranks. In a matter of weeks, the Boomerang spread its wings further north. No. 84 Squadron, a frontline air defense unit stationed at Horn Island Airfield in Torres Strait, was the second unit to receive its batch of CA-12 Boomerangs. The strategic location at Australia's northernmost tip highlighted the trust placed in this homegrown fighter to protect the country from any Japanese threat that came from overseas. As more Boomerangs left the factory, they made their way to new units in the west. No. 85 Squadron, based at RAAF Guildford, became the third unit to transition to the aircraft. Like their counterparts in No. 83 Squadron, their fresh Boomerangs replaced the squadron's aging American Brewster Buffaloes, bringing the unit a new sense of purpose and boosting their morale against the menace of the rising sun. Meanwhile, its pilots, ground crews, and support personnel worked tirelessly to master the nuances of the Boomerang, preparing for the inevitable charge against the enemy, which arrived sooner than later. Two Boomerangs pierced the evening sky as part of their May 16, 1943 routine. Flying Officer Johnstone and Sergeant Stammer sat calmly in their cockpits, their eyes relaxed but vigilant, scanning the horizon for Allied and hostile aircraft alike. Suddenly, the peaceful patrol was thrown into the chaos of combat. Three dark forms appeared on the horizon. The Australian pilots blinked twice, only to realize three Mitsubishi G4M Betty bombers were coming in fast. With their sleek profiles and impressive range, the Japanese aircraft had caused a headache to the Allied forces with their lethal bomb loads. But today, they faced a new opponent. The Boomerangs closed the gap rapidly. At 250 yards, their 20mm cannons and 77mm Browning machine guns spewed rounds into the enemy formation. Tracer rounds streaked through the air, bound for their objective. However, to Johnstone and Stammer's dismay, the Boomerang shots landed on the enemy fighters, which did nothing to the Betty bombers' sturdy construction, as they proved impervious to the Australian fire. With their mission disrupted, the Japanese bombers turned tail, returned fire, and disappeared into the clouds. The Australian pilots returned to base, bewildered and disappointed. 4 days later, as darkness fell on May 20th, 1943, Flight Lieutenant Roy Goon sat ready in his Boomerang at RAAF Learmonth. The airfield near Exmouth, Western Australia, guarded the Allied naval base at Exmouth Gulf. Goon was smoking a cigarette when the alert sounded. Japanese bombers were inbound. The Australian threw out his cigarette, closed the cockpit, and leaped into the sky, his Boomerang's Pratt & Whitney twin Wasp engine, propelling it to an altitude of 30,000 feet, a ceiling that outmatched many Japanese fighters at the time. As Goon climbed, he knew his aircraft's maneuverability could outclass the lumbering bombers. With its short wingspan of 36 feet, the Boomerang could turn inside the larger Japanese aircraft, whose wings stretched to nearly 82 feet. Goon scanned the twilight, and when he finally spotted the bombers, The Japanese pilots, perhaps intimidated by his swift response, released their payloads early and left the area. The Boomerang, eager to take them down, went after them until Goon was ordered to return to base. Another failed hunt for the Boomerang. Many subsequent patrols provided the same result, with Australian officers realizing that maybe their cherished Boomerang was not fast enough to attack the enemy. Nonetheless, Boomerang pilots in the homeland continued training with their fighters, testing their rough construction, heavy armament, and superior low-altitude performance. As the United States Army, Navy, and Marines made their way into Japanese-occupied territories, the RAAF was requested to aid American bombers bound for strikes at Japanese strongholds in New Guinea. Army air forces were spread thin, and Boomerangs from 84 squadrons were called in to join the fray. The Australian pilots, eager to see real action and attack the Japanese, readied their Boomerangs and flew alongside the American bombers from Horn Island. After facing a moderate barrage of enemy flak fire, the formation remained steady and awaited the enemy fighters. When they finally closed in, the Boomerang stepped in, ready to strike with a frontal assault. The lackluster climbing speed of 2,900 feet per minute and a top speed of 300 miles per hour was enough to fend off the agile Japanese fighters, but not enough to chase them away. This unfortunate operation led the RAAF to ditch the Boomerang from air defense duties and replace it with American Curtiss P-40 Kitty Hawks and Warhawks, featuring better top speed and overall performance. Nonetheless, the story of the Australian Boomerang was far from over, despite not taking down a single enemy aircraft since its inception. Instead, it found new life as a ground attack and reconnaissance platform. The Boomerangs became the workhorse of the Army Cooperation Squadrons in the Southwest Pacific area, and began operations in the Solomon Islands, New Guinea, and Borneo. The Boomerang soon began to be praised for its maneuverability during close troop support operations. Its low speed was excellent for maximizing damage against entrenched enemy formations, especially its 20mm cannons that decimated small fortifications. Often, Boomerangs flying close to the ground sprayed their Browning machine guns with lethal accuracy to get rid of Japanese concealed below the thick jungle canopy. Furthermore, as Allied incursions increased in the Southwest Pacific Theater, the Boomerangs commenced deploying smoke bombs to mark priority targets to be attacked by either the infantry or naval artillery. The Boomerangs went to combat in pairs, with the wingman observing ground fire directed at the leader to locate the enemy and finish it with accurate cannon bursts. In September 1943, 8 Boomerangs joined the fight in New Guinea, supporting the Australian 7th and 9th Army Divisions. Besides conducting strafing runs, they also dropped supplies and conducted reconnaissance operations for the Army. The operations were not without casualties. Japanese fighters claimed 2 Boomerangs during this period. Despite the dangers, the Boomerang proved its worth in these roles. Pilots often returned to base with their aircraft bearing evidence of intense combat. Bullet holes from small arms fire pockmarked the fuselage, while branches and leaves wedged in the airframe spoke to the highly low-level nature of their flights. The aircraft's survival was credited to its robust armor plating and aluminum and wood airframe, which, like many other American aircraft, made it the ideal rough aircraft for the dire conditions of the Pacific Theater. The Boomerang's wartime service culminated in August 1945, when No. 4 Squadron participated in the invasion of Borneo as part of the 1st Tactical Air Force. From futile home defense roles to offensive ground operations, the Boomerang, who never shot down an enemy aircraft, redeemed itself as an excellent, well-rounded ground support aircraft.